We're coming towards the end, but we need to address two more topics. The first one we're going to talk about is heat and hydration. This is extremely important, especially in the backcountry or any activity environment. Let's start with heat, and we're talking about hyperthermia. Hyper being high, thermia, heat. Hyperthermia. Now, hyperthermia is not necessarily something people think about all the time. We recognize that we're getting hot, but we never really think we're getting hyperthermic. The reason is we're more comfortable being hot than we are being cold. However, hyperthermia kills way more people than hypothermia. It's just that we don't like being cold as much. Hyperthermia is deadly. Let's start out because there are stages of hyperthermia. I'm going to give you a lot of information, but it all is going to boil down to one thing at the end that makes it very simple. The stages of hypothermia start out with heat cramps. If you were ever working out or doing an activity in a hot environment and you weren't eating or drinking and you just didn't feel good, you had some cramps, some abdominal pain, a little nausea, that's heat cramps. How do you fix that? You stop, you get in the shade, you have some water, you have a snack, you feel better. But what you should recognize is that you are in an environment and you weren't properly treating yourself and you were getting prone for hyperthermia. You need to recognize this as the first stage. If you don't stop it now, it can progress. Pay attention to your clients, pay attention to the people you're hiking with. Make sure that everyone is doing what they're supposed to. And if the environment is not conducive to cooling down, maybe think about another activity. The next stage is known as heat-induced dehydration. Heat-induced dehydration is when, again, I'm active in a hot environment and I'm losing a lot of fluid to that environment. How do I lose a lot of fluid to that environment? I do it through sweating. Now, sweating is our body's best mechanism for cooling. We lose approximately 80% of our heat to the environment through evaporative cooling. That's a really good thing. But when I'm sweating, I'm losing fluid. Losing fluid starts to dehydrate me, and I start to get these signs and symptoms. Again, nausea, vomiting, disorientation, confusion, headache, all of these types of things. What are we going to do? Again, stop the activity, get into a cool environment, get in the shade, remove restrictive clothing, give them something to drink, something to eat, and don't do anything until they completely recover. If they don't completely recover, you need to evacuate. And even if they do, you need to think about whether you should continue the activity. Finally, we move into heat stroke. Now, where does heat stroke start to come in? Well, 98.6 is the average body temperature. Heat stroke we start to worry about at approximately 104 degrees. That's only about 5 degrees above normal. It's not that much. That's going to be an interesting fact when we start going the other way to hypothermia, and you'll see how far we have to drop before it becomes dangerous. But in hyperthermia, it's only about 5 degrees. Now, some people could be a little lower, some people a little higher, but 104 is our threshold. At about 104 and above, what starts to happen is your body starts to denature proteins inside of itself. You start killing off organs. You start having a lot of complications. You can end up with heart dysrhythmias, seizures, and ultimately death. Heat stroke, if not treated immediately, will kill you. Well, what does heat stroke look like? There are two types of heat stroke. There's what's called classic heat stroke and exertional heat stroke. Classic heat stroke is the one that most people know of. It's where the person is very, very hot, very dry, and very red. They're hot because of the heat, they're red because they're flushed, and they're dry because they've sweated out all their body fluid, all the excess fluid, and they do not have any fluid left to sweat. What that means is they can't evaporative cool anymore. They have lost 80% of their cooling mechanism, and their temperature is going to increase. On the flip side, we have exertional heat stroke. With exertional heat stroke, this looks like very hot, very red, but still sweating. And it's this type of heat stroke that can be misleading. It's this one that people think, oh, I think I'm just in heat-induced dehydration, not heat stroke. I'm going to give you a way to tell that you're in heat stroke. When does this one occur? This occurs when you are in an environment where you cannot lose heat to that environment. When I'm exercising in an environment where the ambient temperature is over 90 degrees, we do not radiate heat to the environment because our skin averages about 90 degrees. The other thing is when I'm exercising in an environment where the relative humidity is over 70%, you can sweat all you want, but you will not evaporate. The moisture in the air is too much and it can't hold anymore, meaning you are not cooling down. But like I said, people look at this patient and don't think they're in heat stroke, but it's very dangerous. How do you know you've moved through these stages? Well, I gave you a lot of physical signs and symptoms, but like everything else we've talked about, what is going to guide your decision making? Mental status changes. As a patient becomes hotter and hotter and hotter, you're going to see mental status changes, going from grumbling, angry, disorientation, confusion, lethargy, maybe verbally responsive, painfully responsive, unresponsive. As you move through, that's what you're going to see. What do I do for the person in heat stroke? You have to cool them down right now. You've got to get them into cool water, into a cool environment. Get them in a brook, a stream, the lake, a river. You've got to cool them down now. If you do not lower their temperature, they will die. Somebody who's in heat stroke, once you get them to a place where they're stable, you need to evacuate them. The other component of hyperthermia, as I've alluded to, is hydration. Now, hydration plays a role in all your body systems, but we're going to address it here as it relates to hyperthermia, but you can put it into all other aspects of your medical care. How do we know if a patient is properly hydrated? How do you know if you are properly hydrated? There are lots and lots of theories out there that tell us we need to drink this amount. You must have this amount with you. You may have heard things like you should drink 8 8-ounce glasses of water a day, or you need to have 3 liters of water with you on every hike, or you need more water, twice as much, 3 times as much at altitude than you do at sea level. What you have to ask is, where did this come from? Where is this information and why do I believe it? What you need to know about hydration is it's not a function of how much water you put in your body. I cannot tell, nor can you tell, if someone is hydrated based on how much water they've had to drink. The reason is I may need 3 liters of water a day to be hydrated. Well, person over here might need 2, and someone else might need 6. So if you tell all of us to drink 3 liters, I'm hydrated, this person is overhydrated, and that person is underhydrated. Why is that the case? It's the case because hydration is a very personal thing. Hydration is about kidney function. The only way I know if you're hydrated is by knowing your kidney function. Now, we're not going to do a kidney function test on all of our patients or our clients or the people we're hiking with. So what do? Well, our kidneys produce urine. That's what they do. So I can watch urine output. You may have heard the phrase, if you're hydrated, you're peeing clear and copious. That's also wrong. You should never be peeing clear. If you're peeing clear, it means you're overhydrated. Your body cannot store things it doesn't need. If you're 100% hydrated, your body will get rid of all the excess fluid, which is why you're peeing clear. If you're overhydrated, you're going to again get rid of that excess fluid, which is why you're peeing copious amounts. So clear and copious is the wrong thing to tell people. Drinking a certain amount is the wrong thing to tell people. I can give you a little formula that you can use to help you better understand hydration status. Now, this is not something you need to employ in the field. This is something for your knowledge so that you're better prepared as you move through your career in the outdoors. How do I know if you are peeing the right amount? If you have proper kidney function? Well, you should be producing, the average healthy individual should be producing 1 milliliter per kilogram per hour of urine. Now that might seem complicated, so let's break it down. 1 milliliter, that's fine. Per kilogram. Well, in the US, we don't weigh ourselves in kilograms, so we have to think, how do I convert pounds into kilograms? I'll give you the simple way to do it. You're going to take your weight in pounds. Let's just take a 140-pound person. 140 pounds, you divide it in half. That gives you 70. You then take 10% away from that number. So 10% of 70 would be 7. And you subtract 7 from 70. That gives you 63. A 140-pound person is approximately a 63-kilogram person. 1 milliliter per kilogram per hour. A 140-pound person should be producing 63 milliliters of urine per hour. To put that in perspective for you, I want you to look at this water bottle. That's 100. 63 is down here, several tablespoons. Now, for everyone who's been peeing every 20 minutes, clear and copious, drinking water to beat the band, and you're very proud, I'm glad you're drinking, but you're overhydrated. We don't need as much fluid as we think we need. In fact, if you're eating a regular healthy diet on a daily basis, just normal everyday diet, you get approximately 80% of all the fluid you need from the foods that you eat. You only need to supplement that with about 20% of extra fluid. How does this all relate then to the outdoors and our backcountry experience? Because you're probably not sitting there measuring your urine every time you pee. And you're not sitting there watching everybody else pee and ensuring that they're peeing only 1 milliliter per kilogram per hour. This is what you need to do. Drink when you're thirsty. That's it. The saying or the phrase that you may have heard when someone says to you, by the time you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated, is complete and utter nonsense. If your body's system to keep you in homeostasis only kicked in after you were in trouble, that would be a pretty poor system. Imagine it this way. Imagine that if your breathing mechanism only told you to breathe after you hadn't been breathing for 3 minutes. The body is the same way when it comes to hydration. If you're thirsty, have a drink. If you're not, don't. Now this is great, because if I understand that hydration is a function of urine output, that your urine should be straw-colored and on a regular basis, but not copious, then you're just going to drink. Somebody may need 3 gallons of water a day for their particular kidney function to produce that amount of urine. But somebody else may only need 1 liter a day to produce that. And if I force people to drink, to overhydrate, it's not just an inconvenience or uncomfortable, it's actually dangerous. One of the most common problems that people encounter when it comes to exercise-induced problems is hyponatremia. Hypo, low, natremia refers to sodium. Low sodium. What is going on here is people have been ingrained to drink and drink and drink and drink. What happens then is your body doesn't need that fluid, but you just can't get rid of the excess water. What you need to do is pull things with it to move that water. And what are those things? Electrolytes. What you're doing is you're dumping sodium, potassium, magnesium out of your system. Now, what does that look like? It looks like dehydration. In fact, most people who feel that they've been dehydrated, even though they've been drinking and have been told they're not drinking enough and they feel terrible, weren't dehydrated. They were hyponatremic. This can be a real danger because if I lose that balance of electrolytes, that's what causes my nerves to function. It's what causes my heart to beat, and you can run into some real difficulties. On the flip side, though, people say, well, why don't I just hydrate with electrolyte fluids? Sure, that sounds like a good idea. But the problem is, remember, if your body is not down something, you don't need more of it. So if I haven't lost electrolytes to the environment, which, as an average everyday individual, you're eating and drinking, especially on the trail, you're constantly snacking, You're not down electrolytes, but you're drinking electrolyte replacement therapies. What you're doing is you're going over 100% on all those electrolytes. Your body doesn't want it, so what does it do? It has to get rid of it, and it gets rid of it by peeing them out. But you can't just pee salt crystals, so you have to pull water with you. In fact, when you're hydrating with just electrolyte solutions and you're not down electrolytes, you're dehydrating yourself. So let's go back to the simple thing. What are you going to do? Drink when you're thirsty. Tell other people to drink when they're thirsty. Understand your own body's mechanisms of what you need to stay hydrated. But don't listen to anybody else who tells you you must drink X, because that's not correct.